and began looking around the village. Rebel immediately dispatched messengers to let the villagers know not to take this stranger too seriously. Rebel's exact words were, "Don't pay any attention to this man. He's not one of us. And if he says anything strange, which I assure you he probably will, just discount it and move on. He's not from around here, so probably just let him be." Rebel went back into the back room and collected the bag of stones. He opened it and looked inside. 2 black stones, the two stones he remembered drawing, and on them the 2 phrases that he had remembered writing. Rebel took the bag, went to the armory and grabbed a short spear and started off for the river. He sent a messenger to tell the king's son that he was ready.
Bless you.
Thank you. Rebel and the king's son arrived at the river at about the same time. It was a much bigger river now. The water erosion had worn away a lot more, but the bottom of the river was still, you could still see hundreds, if not thousands, of small black and clear stones. Rebel began, "You know, you could just go back to where you came from, or if you made some friends here in the village, as it looks like you have," a small crowd had been forming, "you could avoid the challenge and just submit to me and my rule, and I'll let you live with us in the village in peace. I'll even crown you as my vice ruler, and everyone will honor and respect you as my assistant." The people in the crowd kind of murmured. In the crowd there were some who had taken a liking to the king's son, and there were others who were hardcore devoted to the status quo. "No, the challenge of the stones is why I came," replied the king's son. "Let's wade out into the river and finish this here and now." "Wait," began Rebel. "We can't have any trickery here, so take off your robe." Rebel recalled some of the more creative attempts villagers had tried using to get the better of him. As a whole, the villagers were a pretty passive bunch, but every so often there was a villager who seemed like he wanted to get creative. One person in particular that Rebel kind of just irked him in the back of his head, tried to sneak a clear stone into the challenge. And when Rebel found that out, he was furious, executed the man on the spot, and that as a way of just not trying to persuade others from doing it, doing trickery of that sort. Most of the villagers, however, just challenged the validity of the stones, claiming that there was no clear stone in the bag, that there were only 2 black stones, and Rebel also had a response for them. He took them one by one as they came in a group into a back room, and they were never seen from again. Rebel knew that without some sort of security, his secret would be let out. Rebel was also a little nervous that the king's son wanted to take the challenge. He was a little nervous because the king's son is no mere villager, but Rebel's pride and anger about what happened back in the king's courtroom blinded him of some of his better judgment. The king's son took off his robe and waded out into the water. Rebel followed after him, and they both stopped just short of midstream. "Now, in the sight of all these witnesses," began Rebel as he held the bag up high over his head, "draw a stone, and if it's black, we will know that you deserve to die." The king's son reached up. All eyes were on him. Felt around in the bag, felt each stone, decided upon one, and it was as though time stopped still. Rebel, knowing that he was about ready to fail, got his spear ready. And then, before even being able to realize what was happening, the king's son quickly took the stone out, put it behind his back without showing the color to anybody, and dropped it into the river. "Show us the stone," demanded the rebel. "Let's see what color it is." "What stone?" replied the king's son, as he showed both hands, revealing that they were empty. "The stone you just drew out of the bag, where is it?" "That stone doesn't matter. Show us the remaining stone that you have in the bag, and we will all know which stone I drew." "No," cried Rebel as he dived into the water to search for the stone that was there. "You might not know this, but I wrote something on that stone, and so it will be pretty easy for me to find here on the bottom of the river." Rebel searched, picking up all the stones, looking over, trying to find the one that he had written part of his basis for his kingdom on. Minutes passed as Rebel searched the bottom of the river without success. "Show us the remaining stone," came the reply. Realizing he had no other option, Rebel opened the bag and looked in at the remaining black stone. Strangely, it was the stone he kind of had expected to see. In clear letters, he read, "The wages of sin is death." Looking at it and thinking for a moment, a thought crossed his mind. "Ah," he thought, "this could work to my advantage." Rebel drew the remaining stone from the bag, and without letting anyone see its color, he began to speak. "My subjects, my friends, many of you are aware that one thing this challenge has taught us is that these stones have made an example of anybody who has challenged my rule here in this village. One of the laws I happen to have written on the black stone in here that was in this bag and is now in my hand, and that is this: the wages of sin is death. However, our guest knows this law in its more original form. Under its original form, the soul who sins is the one who will die. You, Jesus, Son of the King, have made an example of me for the last time. You have sinned against me by challenging my rule here, and for that you will die." With one smooth motion, Rebel revealed the black stone high above his head in his left hand and thrust the spear into the king's side. The instant the spear punctured his heart, the remaining black stone exploded into a fine mist. All went silent. It seemed as though time had stopped. The king's son's body fell into the river and floated downstream with the dust from the last black stone. Let's take a moment and analyze the story once again. Analyze this scene. Jesus came to our village here on earth and challenged Satan, the original rebel from heaven. Jesus defeated Satan on the cross and took the penalty for our sins. I'm not sure if it's biblical, but in my mind's eye, back in the Garden of Eden, we know that the tree of knowledge of good and evil was in the center of the garden. And I'd like to say that it was on a hill in the center of the garden. We know also that Jesus died on the hill of Golgotha. In our story here, the challenge of the stones originated in a river, and that's where it ended. There's no way of knowing, and it probably is very unlikely, that the hill that the tree of knowledge of good and evil was on was the same hill that Calvary was on. There's absolutely no way of knowing, because the flood kind of totally screwed around with the whole landscape of the earth. But it's kind of a nice thing to think of in my mind, even if it's probably not that accurate. I like the symbolism behind that. Also, Jesus dying on the cross when he had committed no sin causes a problem for the clause, "the soul who sins is the one who will die." It changes the rules, and it no longer means that the wages of sin has to equal death, because Jesus died without sin. Let's look at the rest of this law, reading it as it is written in Ezekiel, and reading it in the words of the king. This is Ezekiel 18. And bear with me, because this is probably a longer passage than what you're used to hearing from the stage, but seeing this whole courtroom declaration is it's really enlightening. So if you're new here, this is probably a longer verse of passage, and it might be a little confusing, but just bear with us as we begin. The word of the Lord came to me. What do you mean by quoting this proverb about the land of Israel? The fathers eat sour grapes and the children's teeth are set on edge. Next slide. As surely as I live, declares the sovereign Lord, you will no longer quote this proverb in Israel. Go on. For every living soul belongs to me, the Father as well as the Son. Both alike belong to me. The soul who sins is the one who will die. Suppose there is a righteous man who does what is just and right. He does not eat at the mountain shrines or look to the idols of the house of Israel. He does not defile his neighbor's wife or lie with the woman during her period. He does not oppress anyone, but returns what he took in pledge for a loan. He does not commit robbery, but gives his food to the hungry and provides clothing for the naked. He does not lend at usury or take excessive interest. He withholds his hand from doing wrong and judges fairly between man and man. He follows my decrees and faithfully keeps my laws. That man is righteous. He will surely live, declares the sovereign Lord. Suppose he has a violent son who sheds blood or does any of these other things, though the father has done none of them. He eats at the mountain shrines. He defiles his neighbor's wife. He oppresses the poor and needy. He commits robbery. He does not return what he took in pledge. He looks to the idols. He does detestable things. He lends at usury and takes excessive interest. Will such a man live? No, he will not. Because he has done all these detestable things, he will surely be put to death, and his blood will be on his own head. But suppose this son has a son who sees all the sins his father commits, and though he sees them, he does not do such things. Bear with me, this is the grandson of the original person. He does not eat at the mountain shrines or look to the idols of the house of Israel. He does not defile his neighbor's wife. He does not oppress anyone or require a pledge for a loan. He does not commit robbery, but gives his food to the hungry and provides clothing for the naked. He withholds his hand from sin and takes no usury or excessive interest. He keeps my laws and follows my decrees. He will not die for his father's sin. He will surely live. But his father will die for his own sin because he practiced extortion, robbed his brother, and did what was wrong among his people. Yet you ask, why does the son not share in the guilt of his father? Since the son has done what is just and right and has been careful to keep all my decrees, he will surely live. The soul who sins is the one who will die. The son will not share the guilt of the father, nor will the father share the guilt of the son. The righteousness of the righteous man will be credited to him, and the wickedness of the wicked will be charged against him.